I'm going to help you go back to your office with a program that's going to increase productivity and it's going to pay for itself. During my presentation, we're going to answer 3 questions. Does food influence productivity? If so, which foods? And then how can you benefit from this information? I was very clear about using the word influence, so I'm going to ask 2 polling questions. Raise your hand if you think that food could increase productivity. It's almost all the hands. Raise your hand if you think that food, certain foods, could decrease productivity. Wow, there's actually a few more hands. Excellent, so I'll be preaching to the choir today, that's great. So for starters, who am I and why should you care? I'm a lucky American. I lived the American dream. About 17 years ago, I retired from a money management firm I started on Wall Street. Retiring young seemed like the American dream. However, for me, it was the American nightmare, because retiring young was not my dream, it was someone else's. I was sad for no reason, and I didn't understand why, because everything in my life on paper looked really good. Except inside my head, no one would ever want to visit the inside of my brain. I became anxious, I started getting panic attacks. I became depressed, which I really didn't understand. And for the first time in my life, this workaholic became a procrastinator, unproductive, and sleeping until noon. I was basically baffled over what was happening. My mother said, "Michael, you're bored, go get a job." I go, "Ma, I'm doing the American dream. I'm going to be vacationing for the rest of my life. I don't want to go out and get a job." I wish I had listened to her. Instead, I listened to the doctor. The doctor said, "Mr. McCarthy, you're depressed. Have some antidepressants." Well, Americans love pills. I'm an American. I like pills, so why not try that? The pills didn't work. What did work was losing my sex drive. People will not tell you that 80% of the time when you take antidepressants, your sex drive doesn't decrease, it like goes away. And I'm 160 pounds. With the carb cravings, I was about 40 pounds heavier because of the pills. I went back to my doctor and I said, becoming fat and losing my sex drive is a depressant, not an antidepressant. So then I went to the therapist. For $200 an hour, a stranger pretended to care about all of my complaints. That helped a little bit. It felt nice to be heard, but nothing really changed. Instead, what turned things around is I went back to Harvard to study positive psychology. I finally hit a bottom and said, I'm not happy and I don't know how to do it anymore. I'm going to have to go to school to learn how to be happy again. Yes, I felt pathetic, but I was tired of being sick and tired. What I learned there was a question popped in my head. Could food affect mood? We had had a module about violent schizophrenics where when they were in lockdown in mental institutions, if they went on gluten-free diets, the violence went away. And I remember talking to some mothers who had autistic children. This isn't a scientific study, but they said when they took their kids off gluten, the behavior issues went away or reduced. And I thought, I wonder if food could actually affect anxiety and depression. The answer is yes. Now, I'm not a doctor, but I'm a patient. So I turned myself into a guinea pig to see if food could actually get me off antidepressants, get rid of my procrastination, and increase my productivity. My depression went away when I started taking supplements that corresponded to good mood, like serotonin. Within 48 hours, I had my last panic attack, and I've never had one again. I was so excited I told a friend. My friend said, the supplements are great, but you get better absorption through the food, not just supplements. That excited me. I went to nutrition school in New York. While there, the school was basically teaching me how to be a health coach. I only cared about superfoods and I cared about scalability. I decided I'm going to make a startup. This is going to be my 4th in my career. And the one thing we do about startups is you need scale. I thought, as a health coach, how many people can I help a day? Maybe 5. But what if I made a global food company where I gave people food that helped anxiety and depression? They don't even need to know that it helps their anxiety and depression. All I need to do is help them. I learned the ingredients of superfoods that affected brain health. From New York City, I moved to Germany. I was the first American to go to the German baking school, where they had just changed the rules where non-Germans were allowed to go. So I lived in Germany for several months. I made friends with the head bakers because I speak German. The head baker had diabetes. I told him what I was trying to do, and I said, look, I'm a Wall Street money manager. I don't know anything about food except what I just learned in nutrition school. I know how to make businesses, but I don't know how to bake. He said to me, why don't you retrofit a popular food product in the United States, take out the bad ingredients and put in the good ingredients? So what I did is I basically took a hybrid of a 7-layer bar, chocolate chip cookie, and a blondie brownie. I came back to the United States and I made BUDI bar. BUDI is a Sanskrit word for wise because all the ingredients do something for brain function. We got carried in all the Whole Foods. 3 years ago, the company was bought out. I enjoyed making the food products, but once the food products were made, there's only so much shelf life you can get, and the fun part was making the food products. Selling food to a grocery store, super boring. So I sold the company, and then I realized I really enjoy teaching because I did go on the speaking circuit. So now I teach. I teach entrepreneurship and innovation at Harvard. I also teach public speaking, so let me know if I'm doing okay. And I teach about food and mood. So back to the 3 questions. Let's take a look at research studies. Can food influence productivity? Now, all the studies I show you, you can either photograph this, or the last slide is going to be my email address and my cell phone. You can text me or email me, and I will send you my deck, which has the hyperlink to look at the articles. This is super summarized, but if you take a look at this study of 20,000 employees, the studies show they came out with higher performance if they were healthy eaters. If you ate 5 or more servings of fruits and vegetables Monday through Thursday, 20% likely to be more productive. Healthy eaters and regular exercisers, lower absenteeism, higher job performance. Again, these are super summaries. The longer version has some more detail for you. Now, a study culled of 2,300 publications, culled down to 30 for a review, asking the question, can worksite interventions increase productivity and profitability? Surprisingly, diet-related initiatives can increase productivity 1 to 2%. That translates into money on the bottom line. On larger companies, this can actually pay for itself because the return on investment from the increased productivity actually outweighs the cost of the food. I'm going to offer you 2 suggested strategies at the end of my talk where you can actually make money on this based upon the time that you initiate the strategy that I'm going to suggest. Nutrition and Productivity took a look at a meta-study looking at poor nutrition, and they discovered that it does increase the risk of depression, anxiety, difficulty concentrating. Anxiety and depression is directly linked to productivity and procrastination. Also, nutrition will impact mood, energy levels, and creativity. So a lot of this we all nod our head and say, yeah, this makes sense, I get it. But now there's finally some numbers and some real research to say you can make a little bit of money and it can be free if you implement the program properly. Harvard Business Review, summary of a whole long article, food has a direct impact on cognitive performance. The good news is that most of the people in this audience are female. Raise your hand if you ever heard of a term called hangry, hungry and angry. Like every hand is up. I had an assistant that taught me that phrase. If you're hungry and you're angry, isn't it a little hard to concentrate? It's easy to be angry and resentful, but it's a little hard to concentrate and be creative. Now, this is a survey of 1,000 professionals, asking them about free lunch. They found that with workers, if you gave them free lunch, 54% were more likely to stay with the company. 70% were more likely to say nice things about you. Hi, I love working at this place. 60% say that they are happier working here. When it comes to teams that get free lunch, 46% say they would have more focus, 49% more productive, and look at the return on investment. 150% return on investment, meaning the productivity and creativity, increased sales, lower absenteeism that occurred went to the bottom line, and that outweighed the cost of the free lunch. So to answer question number one, yes, food does influence productivity. Next, which foods? We're going to take a look at foods that increase and foods that decrease. Back to the research. No surprises here. Nutrition and productivity shows us that folate is good for productivity. You find that in meat, beans, and greens. Omega-3, very popular. One of the best forms of omega-3 is through hemp seeds. It's very expensive. It's about $6 a pound. Flaxseed is about $1 a pound. However, you're going to be getting more nutritional value out of hemp seed. And also hemp seed's delicious. Vitamin C, you'd be getting from peppers and oranges and fruits. There's actually more vitamin C in a bell pepper than there is in an orange. It's just that orange has had a better PR firm. It's true, they did hire a PR firm. Vitamin E, nuts and vegetable oils, and water. I actually don't really like water, but I love sparkling water. So when you see water, that includes water with bubbles. Back to Harvard Business Review. What they discovered, looking at other studies, was that if you have low glucose, you have low focus. So if you have a candy bar or a smoothie that is just full of sugar, then you're going to get a slump. Same thing happens with high fat. Even though you might get sustained energy out of it, you're going to have less oxygen. Same thing is going to happen, you get groggy. For example, think of a cheeseburger. The burger part's fine, the meat part, but it's the bun and the cheese that can make you a little bit groggy. The bun, because of the flour, that turns to sugar, and then that's going to give you a slump, but also in the cheese has casein in it, and casein is a mild opiate. Now, this is actually one of the most famous and referred to studies on food and productivity, the carrot study. And they basically discovered for the first time that fruits and vegetables could actually increase well-being. Now look at the last definition of well-being, creativity. A lot of firms want creativity out of their workers. This study is actually predictive for mood on the next day. So if you have a lot of fruits and vegetables, take a look at this, 7 to 8 servings a day, that's like 1 an hour. It's quite a bit. That can predict a better mood the next day. Now here's a study in Japan. The reason I bring up Japan is that last year I went to Japan, I spoke in front of 500 people, including the mayor of Kyoto, and they had a question. Is it possible that Japan has the lowest rate of depression in the world, 1/10 that of the United States, in part because of the traditional Japanese diet? One of their issues is depression is rising. Is it correlated to the Western diet? So I did some research and I gave a talk on that. So this is a study of 3 diets in Japan, over 2,200 workers, looking at 3 diets: the traditional Japanese diet, a fish diet, and the Western diet. And what they found is that only the balanced Japanese diet was related to low depressive symptoms. It was especially helpful for high-stress workers with low support from management. The last speaker worked at Prudential. I was a cold caller at Prudential. I wish we had a serenity room. It was the worst job of my life, $6.50 an hour, 400 dials a day, 100 connects, which means 300 people a day said, "I'm not interested in what you have to say." I wish I'd had something that helped me with my depressive symptoms. Next study was taking a look directly at diet, depression, and stress at work. This was interesting. Carbohydrates and fats actually didn't have an association with depression, according to this study, but low protein did. If the protein levels are too low, now I have found that for myself by studying orthomolecular medicine, if you want to prevent depression, depending on your body size, you actually want to have a fistful of protein every meal. So depending on your body size, like for me, this fist is about 3 eggs in the morning. It's a chicken breast, it's a filet mignon, but you want to have literally this much protein every meal, and you want to be eating every 5 hours because you don't want your sugar to drop too much. Now this study is taking a look at almost 2,000 workers, looking at fiber, total, soluble, and insoluble. Do either of these three do anything? Only high fiber from vegetables and fruits were related to low depression. Cereal didn't do anything. So it was just the fruits and vegetables with the fiber. Now, this is the rate of depression in Japan versus the United States. 2.5% in Japan, 19% in the US. What does 19% mean? It means 19% of the US population at one point in their life will be diagnosed with clinical depression. In Japan, it's about 1/10. Now, for men in the room, I see one, we want to have a lot of folate to lower depression. So folate is basically dark green. If you're slightly lazy, you can get folic acid. Be careful about drinking alcohol because your folic acid goes away. But folate is what men are looking for. Now, what about pregnant women who are at the office? Postpartum depression can be a real issue. What the study found in Japan is that if women had a lot of yogurt because of the calcium, a lot of seaweed because of the iodine, and a lot of fish and eggs because of the protein, it helped reduce postpartum depression. It also helped maintain productivity and a good mood during pregnancy. The United States has a deficit in the food supply of iodine. Fortunately, Trader Joe's has these seaweed snacks for 99 cents. The plain tastes like your backyard, but they have a spicy one that actually has a nice little snap to it, and I kind of like this. Yeah, you're going, yeah, I'm like, yeah, I know, I give away the plain ones too. I go for the spicy, 99 cents. I don't work for Trader Joe's, but it's the only thing that I'll go for iodine. So now let's take a look at a grocery list of productive foods. Eggs, you want the protein. Greek yogurt, full fat Greek yogurt, because we want the protein. We don't want the no fat because the no fat is replaced with sugar. You'll see that we really don't want sugar. Bananas. Bananas are one of the only foods that contain serotonin. Also, bananas are yellow and they look like a smile. In about a half an hour, you get a little bit of a mood boost. I actually learned on a sailing trip in Maine about 3 weeks ago from a 12-year-old kid that I've been opening up my banana backwards. You're actually supposed to open it from the bottom up. 2 nods. Okay, yeah. You know, there's 3 people in the room that know how to open up a banana. Do it from the bottom, and yeah, it actually works a little bit better. Nuts. There are 2 winners here. Almonds and walnuts. Interesting thing about almonds, when the Greeks dissected the brain, they looked at the very center part of the brain, and there was this little thing that looked just like an almond, and they named it the amygdala. Amygdala is Greek for almond, and that is our 911 center. That is where fear and panic attacks are created. The interesting thing about almonds is that they will reduce anxiety. Now, walnuts are also very good for the brain. The funny thing about walnuts is that they're about as hard as a skull. And when you crack it open, the meat looks just like a brain, and it has 2 lobes just like a brain. So it is interesting that you will notice in nature there are foods that will correspond to the body part that it helps. Kind of like a tomato. If you slice a red tomato in half, it has 4 chambers and it's red, just like a heart. Dark chocolate. I'm glad this room is full of women. 80% dark chocolate or higher is great for you. It has 2 chemicals inside, which are nicknamed the bliss chemical and the love chemical. They will improve your mood. When women talk about being a chocoholic or a chocolate craving, chocolate, cacao directly, actually affects a female brain, has more impact than on a male brain. So it's actually not just that you like it, you're having a craving for it, it actually helps your brain better than a male brain. You want 80% cacao because you want the cacao part. When you look at chocolate, if you see 80%, the other 20% is equally divided between sugar and cocoa butter. Blueberry juice. You want the antioxidants. You're much better off having the blueberries so you can get the skin and the fiber, which would slow down the absorption of the sugar. There's quite a bit of sugar in blueberry juice, but if the alternative is soda or a diet soda or something with sugar in it, then go for a blueberry juice. Beets. Beets are one of my favorites for good mood. Beets have betaine in them. Raise your hand if you've ever heard the word betaine. 2, yes. Betaine is such a strong antidepressant. It's synthesized into most pharmaceutical antidepressants. When you take a pill, chances are you're taking some betaine. So grab some beet juice, also lowers blood pressure. If you don't like the taste of it, mix it halfway with carrot juice, a little bit of ginger, and it's quite tasty. It's a little bit expensive. However, if you do your own juicing, to juice beets and carrots is really cheap. To try to juice other foods, it can be very expensive. It's still a messy cleanup. Halibut, basically a fatty fish. Salmon's in here too. It's for the omega-3. Now what I learned in nutrition school is that most of the omega-3 is between the meat and the skin. So when you peel the skin back, there's kind of this mayonnaise-y looking thing. That's really where most of the omega-3 is sitting. So you actually want to try to have your fish with the skin on it. Uh-oh. Try it. It's good. Look at it making the face. It's okay. If you grill it and that skin gets crispy, then it's pretty tasty. Again, seaweed. Seaweed salad or seaweed snacks. It's the iodine that we're looking for. The one thing about a seaweed salad, you bring some dental floss to the Japanese restaurant, it just gets in you. I don't know what it is, but like you just totally need to floss when you have a seaweed salad. Coconut, medium chain saturated fat. Coconut doesn't usually get stored as fat, but it gets reserved as energy. Coconut has a lot of wonderful properties. It's good as an antiperspirant. It's actually good for dental health. It does a lot of nice properties. What we're looking for is basically a brain boost. Mussels. Mussels are cheap, they're really good for the mood and productivity. Also, clams, oysters, crabs, and lobster. Try a lobster roll, without the bun please, and notice your mood 30 minutes later. You may get a significant boost in mood. I noticed it on my own, and when I started to research shellfish, mussels are actually a better bet, and they're pretty inexpensive. Grass-fed beef. What we're looking for here is the vitamin B complex. We want grass-fed because we don't want the antibiotics. The antibiotics aren't going to be very good for you at all. Grass-fed is more expensive. However, you only need 1 steak per month. Vitamin B stays in the body for quite some time, so you don't have to have a steak every day. Once a month is all you need. Asparagus and spinach, we're looking for the magnesium. Magnesium is green. The darker the green, the more magnesium. Asparagus, spinach, kale. Iceberg lettuce, a bit of a waste of time when it comes to magnesium. Really, spinach and kale are your big winners. This is how the workers are going to jump out of bed when they start eating this food. This is what I do in the morning. Now let's take a look at unproductive foods. This is the part of the speech where everyone's like, let's leave early, we don't want to hear this part. So let's just start with the bad news first. Alcohol. I don't even know if it's a food. However, what it ends up doing, what alcohol does is that it strips a lot of your happy chemicals. So when you come back to the office the next morning, besides the fact that you're hungover and you're dehydrated and your brain is shrunk a little bit, literally, you have urinated out a lot of folic acid, a lot of magnesium, and that's where some anxiety pops in, the guilt over drinking too much. Actually, chemically, you really are depressed at the moment because a lot of those good chemicals were wiped away. Sugar. I think we all know in the room, sugar's not good for you. The brain needs sugar to live, but in a dosed format, not a tidal wave of a candy bar. If you're going to have something that's super high in sugar, try to add in chia seeds. It will lower the glucose rush. However, if you can just ditch out sugar as much as possible, you're going to be better off for it. Flour. Flour just turns to sugar inside the body, so flour is pretty much the same thing. One really great, easy way to eat healthier and be more productive, have more energy, more clarity, get rid of white ingredients. Salt, sugar, flour. It's really easy to say that, but try to find food products that don't have those three. It's a challenge, but you can do it. I actually find that doing more cooking at home, it's easier. I can control things a lot better. Aspartame, it's just not a good one. It actually does increase anxiety. Your brain looks at it just like sugar inside the brain, so you're really not doing yourself any favors with that. Processed foods. If it comes in a can or a box, chances are it's processed. Why do we care about processed? Because that is a trans fat. This is the only fat that we really, really don't want, because when you take fat and you add a hydrogen molecule to it, that is called hydrogenated fat. That's where it becomes a trans fat. That is one molecule away from a plastic. You are literally slowly embalming yourself with one molecule away from a plastic when you eat trans fat. It's attractive, isn't it? Number 3, now that we know the good and the bad and that it influences, we can increase productivity, decrease productivity, we know the good foods, we know the bad foods, how can you benefit from this information? Let's go back to the research studies. Nutrition and Productivity says eat breakfast and don't skip meals. Why do you want to eat breakfast? In the word, break fast. You're fasting. Your brain has shrunk a little bit from dehydration. You will never hit maximum mood function in the day if you skip breakfast. Your body goes into this little hibernation mode. It's kind of like running on fumes. When they say it's the most important meal of the day, it's actually the most important meal if you want to not be anxious, not be depressed, and you want to be productive. Don't skip meals because your sugar level gets too low, you get groggy, it's hard to think. So what I usually suggest is eating every 3 to 5 hours. If you get a hunger pain, you've waited too long. According to Harvard Business Review, they have 3 steps. One is decide where you're going to go have lunch either the day before or that morning, because you'll have more willpower. Oh, let's all go to Life Alive or Sweet Greens and have something really healthy. But if you wait until you're hungry and it's noon and you're talking to your 2 or 3 buddies and say, oh, where do you want to eat? I don't know, what about you? I don't know, what, how about pizza? Okay, let's go get some pizza. And then you kind of wrecked it. It's really hard to have willpower without planning. The second is just grazing throughout the day for the steady glucose. And the kind of things you want to be eating would be almonds and protein bars. Nice thing about protein bars, they have a shelf life of 9 months or more. So they have shelf stability, and almonds have a shelf life of about 3 years. So here comes my best advice. When I teach public speaking, I always tell people you have to end your speech with a call to action, which means I need to change your behavior or change the way you're thinking. Here's the rub. Humans don't like change. We just simply don't like change. So what I'm going to ask you to do is something very small, very cheap, and you might actually make money at it, and you can expand this. So watch what this does. Plus, remember, I teach entrepreneurship, so I can't help but put some sort of money-making effort into this. Free breakfast. Now look at the menu. Water, eggs, fruit, Greek yogurt. These vegetables can go into a vegetable omelet. Where does the money-making come in? Imagine a cafeteria that opens at 6 a.m. Work starts at 9 a.m. All the regular food that you have there, the muffins and all that other stuff, none of that changes. But between 6 and 8 a.m., what if these foods were free? What do you think the bill's going to be on one person eating breakfast? Maybe $10 when they get the omelet? But the free breakfast goes away at 8 a.m. What do you think they're going to do between 8 a.m. and 9 a.m.? They might be like, wow, I'm feeling really productive and full and in a good mood. There's nothing else to do. I'm at work. Why don't I just go to work? You may actually get a free hour's worth of work out of employees by giving them early breakfast. Now, this will make you money as long as your employees are earning more than the cost of the breakfast, which would be about $10. This is where the money making comes in. The next one is free snacks all day. Water, almonds, bananas, protein bars. The 80% cacao dark chocolate is going to go really well. Now, when I teach a sales class, one thing that I tell people is free advice is worthless. If they don't pay a lot, they don't pay a lot of attention, and people want what they can't have. So instead of rolling out the free snacks to all your departments, What if you called up all of your departments and said, we're just going to do a pilot. 1 or 2 departments will get free snacks all day, but you have to track it. We have to make sure that productivity is being increased. And we want you to tell us, how is that productivity going to be measured? Is it by lower absenteeism? Is it going to be by increased sales? Ask the employees how they want to measure the metric. Maybe it's someone staying later. Maybe they're getting their reports done quicker. Ask them to participate, but only let 2 departments get the free snacks in exchange for someone in that department measuring the impact. Now you get a free study out of it. When you start to see people getting jealous of the other departments, then you can slowly roll it out from there. So these are 2 very simple, easy steps to do. You could do it with a few $100s on the breakfast. I'd say you're probably going to start paying for yourself almost immediately. Now, in closing, did we answer the 3 questions? Yes, food does influence productivity. Which ones? Basically, it's common sense. Healthy food are good for you. The processed stuff, we really want to be avoiding that. How do you use that? Free breakfast, free snacks. If you want to be a more productive person, eat productive foods, because you are what you eat. Thank you. So that we stay on time, I'm going to take questions off on the side. There's my email address and my cell phone. Feel free to email me or text me, and I'm happy to send you my slides. Thanks again.